Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast for Backlot Banter, where we view and review every single Palme d'Or winner. We're talking about the Cannes Film Festival, and today we go back to its very first year as we are going to get through one of these days every single one of those, like, eight movies that they nominate, that they said were winners that year? However many it is.
11.
11?
Close enough.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Well,
We've already done a number of them.
we have done a number of
I
them.
think this is number 5 or 6 of
Yes.
the
Jesus Christ.
1945 year.
They make
1945, 46. Yeah.
They make up quite a few of our winners. And today we are talking about the film The Last Chance from Switzerland, directed by Leopold Lindbergh. Another World War II picture. And I'm looking forward to hearing
can
your
believe it.
guys' thoughts about this one. Because, well, I don't know. It's another movie, and we're here to talk about it. But before we talk about the
That's
film,
the job.
that's our task today.
Uh-huh.
My first task, my mini task, will be to remind you of what we did last week, because if you saw the video, we watched The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, the Jacques Demy film from France. Lovely musical, and we really enjoyed it, actually. It got a pretty good score of 8.2, which put it at the 6th spot on our list, below Uncle Boon Me, Who Recalls His Past Lives, and Rome Open City.
We can.
Oh, we can.
Uncle Boon Me, Who Can
Uncle
Recall
Boon
His
Me?
Past Lives.
He's
Mhm.
able to?
If he wants to.
Yeah.
If it so pleases him, he can recall his past lives.
Check out that review as well for another great film.
Yeah.
There you have it. That's what happened last time. What happened in cyberspace while we were away, Abram? Did any commenters decide to let their thoughts be known to the greater World Wide Web?
Yes, Mr. Mixia went back to the classic encapsulatory video of the last Quest for the Bestest show. We watched every Best Picture Oscar winner and ranked them.
Uh-huh.
And this fantastic commenter says, and they timestamp it. So
Wow.
you, viewer, can go find this comment and then go right to the part of the video, right to the text.
To
my
the
gosh.
relevancy. Right to the
Get
text.
the
like that one.
important context for which this comment is applicable to.
Yeah. Well, you can pause this video right now, go to 5 minutes and 20 seconds in that video, and then listen to the comment.
Oh, 5 minutes in. Okay,
You
we're
can
hopping
do
in
it.
early.
Or just
But
listen
at
to the
this-
comment.
At this point, and I suspect this is because you ranked the film rather low,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Mixia says, A Man for All Seasons is not bad at all. It's one of the most mature movies in that list, a very quiet, subtle piece about a man sticking to his ideals and the whole world turns against him. It's beautifully written, brilliantly acted, and has amazing costumes. As a historian, I rarely saw the 16th century being portrayed more authentically.
I mean, I feel like a guy who all the world's turned against when I say it's a bad movie. Everyone's always like, but I stand by my morals, just like that guy that I can't remember the
Are
name
your
of.
morals that you like the movie or you don't? like the
No,
movie?
A Man for All Seasons. No, that's
Yeah.
a boring ass movie.
I think we did. I think we all
I
didn't
think
like
we were
Yeah.
pretty
did we?
negative
Well,
on
I
that
consider-
one.
Well,
Yeah.
I say all. I think it's all right.
I don't
guess.
remember it at all.
Yeah, I don't have so much
Sorry, Mr.
remembrance of that
Mixia.
one. Thank you for the comment and bringing
But
your
thanks for giving your
historical perspective
context.
into
Yes.
this whole thing.
Oh, you guys.
Tanner,
Okay.
hit us
Mm-hmm.
with that plot of The Last Chance.
Absolutely, Timo. I would love to do that. So The Last Chance, as we said already, takes place during World War II, particularly in the country of Italy. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Italy was under fascist occupation at the time during World War II.
Classic.
So we follow our two heroes, Lieutenant John Halliday and Sergeant James Jim Braddock, a British soldier and an American soldier. They are together on a train, a POW train, going through Italy. They've been captured at the beginning of the movie, but as fate would have it, they are freed by a bombing raid on said train, and are freed and they resolve to sort of try and get out of Italy and get across the border to Switzerland, neutral Switzerland, sweet, sweet, neutral, peaceful Switzerland. Okay. And in doing so, they
Promised Land.
the promised land. That's right. They want that sweet chocolate, that cheese,
That fondue.
some multi tools maybe. Anyway, they like. Anyway, they like
Longhorn or whatever.
Venezuela.
Vuvuzela.
No.
Anyway, they, come across some other refugees and so on and so forth. They shack up in a church for a little bit. They try and sneak across a mountain pass where they are confronted by Nazis. Some of them
Skiing
die.
Nazis.
Skiing Nazis, the worst kind.
Yeah, the worst kind.
That's near the bottom of my top 100 Nazis ranked.
They're confronted by the Nazis. They get shot at. Some of them die. Some of them don't. And ultimately, they get to Switzerland and everything's okay at the end of the movie. I don't know if... Hello?
We're getting a FaceTime
We're
call from my brother.
We're getting
Oh.
a dispatch from Keaton Hazel.
He is being rebuked. We are not picking up that call.
Now, I don't know if you can tell, folks, from the general vibe of the episode so far, but this isn't exactly one that's gonna go over well, I don't think. I didn't particularly care for this movie, if I can roll right into my thoughts on it.
Why don't we just do a thumbs up or a thumbs down for all of us to
Okay,
just
on
get
our
it out of the
thoughts.
way really quickly, and then we can go on back to
Go
dogpiling.
thumbs
this.
down for that.
Yeah,
For audio listeners, if we do that
that's a
anymore,
quadruple.
That's a
thumbs down.
unanimous
There we go.
thumbs down.
Unanimous thumbs down on this one. Tanner, why didn't you like it?
Well, Timo, far be it from me to say old movie boring, but that's kind of how I feel sometimes. Only because, new movies can be boring as well, particularly when, the sins of having not very well fleshed out characters or a sort of poorly paced story and just generally being quite anticlimactic, that can make a movie bad across the generations, and that applies to
What do you know?
Last
We are
Chance, I
doomed to
think.
repeat history lest we not learn from it.
That's right.
Learn from it by watching an old movie that has seemingly very little significance to film culture. I'd never heard of this movie. The very popular website Letterboxd only has about 500 people that have logged it. With
510 now that Abram and I have hopped on
make
board.
that 511. I haven't logged it
511,
yet, but yeah. But obviously not a particularly popular movie, and this is an interesting one because I think this film mostly makes me just think about film history and the ways that old films were structured, and where I think we have learned from some of those mistakes and learned from some pacing elements that I think this kind of story, where I think there's some story elements there, but I think that if it was frankly done in the modern day, I think it would have been done a little bit better. And then it makes me think a little bit about how many World War II movies were made at the time and how many I've seen, and how that puts this movie into a very ununique context in my mind. And then also how important and how little I usually think about how important film preservation is to the accessibility and popularity of a film. This film is available online. We watched a YouTube version of it that was colorized in post. I don't know if this was an official element of the film's production or not, but it is available on YouTube. It's very low quality. The audio is bad. The camera work in general is not great, but the transfer is really poor. The lighting through that transfer is presumably worse than it would be if it was a higher quality transfer. And I think all of this just contributes to a film that feels lost to time. And even though it's available on YouTube, it's not one that's I've ever heard talked about. It's not one that I think stands out in any way. I think it actually has quite a few very significant flaws that lead it to be maybe one of the least engaging films we've watched for this series. And we had to watch a version of the film that was a not ideal experience because it's the only version of the film that still exists, as far as I know, which is with poor transfer and poor audio quality, and so and no captions. We had to use the auto-generated YouTube captions. Were not very good.
Well, there are captions
The film-
embedded in the film itself.
I think this is a
For-
rather
for
interesting
foreign
note
languages.
about
Yes.
this film is its captions that are in the old style. They're in a style that, like you said, is lost to time. And what I was noticing was that while the captions simply do not line up with the dialogue at all, like the foreign language dialogue, they are telling you kind of what you need to know off of what the people are saying.
Mhm.
And so while I think as modern viewers, we're very frustrated about that because I want to hear the dialogue. I want to hear the nuance. How are you playing with words? Like, how are you making these characters expressed through their language? Well, we get 100% of that removed by not accurately translating in the baked-in subtitles. And I watched this on Tubi, and it looked like that was either a VHS rip or an over-the-air rip because it actually fully fuzzed out like once or twice while viewing.
Sure.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And
Abram and
then
I
black and
started
white.
on the Tubi version. We started with the Tubi version because that also opens with like this, a classic cinema presentation, like definitely like a TV broadcast kind of thing.
And I was even wondering, like, there were a couple of moments well, first I was looking at runtimes and they vary online. Like the runtime for this film is not consistent, except in that it is consistent in that the only version is the hour and 30-minute one, but there's a hour and 45-minute one. I was wondering.
I even saw an hour 25 on YouTube somewhere, so I don't know where that comes in, but
is it possible that
thoughts.
the version that is widely available, this 93-minute version, is slimmed down, is chopped for TV? Maybe in the 50s or 60s, after this movie had its heyday, did it get redone for broadcast on TV, and that's kind of the version that we see? And so there's
shorter, colorized, yeah, possibly.
The Tubi version, to me, had moments in the soundtrack where it would go from it was kind of, we're in coverage of a scene, we're just kind of going back and forth, and underneath one guy's face there would be the soundtrack, and boom, it would cut and the soundtrack would be gone, and I was like,
no,
that is evidence to me of some edits happening post release,
a little bit of tampering on the back end.
Yeah, so clouding my viewing, but also this is the only version that exists, so we've got to take it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't like the movie. It was boring. I agree with you guys on all these fronts.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing point, and I'm much more interested in sort of what happened to the film over time than I am the film itself. I don't think the film is aggressively bad. I don't think it does anything that's particularly wrong. I actually find the plot quite interesting, and I think all of the beats are there for an engaging story. And so, insofar as the nut of the idea was interesting, I was engaged, and I think hyper engaged in some ways, because I had to pay extra close attention and try to derive as much as I could out of this bizarre version of the film we were watching on YouTube. I kept getting interrupted by Tide ads too.
We were watching on YouTube. We were just getting not even you're so used to modern YouTube videos having ad breaks in them too, but this will just come in the middle of a dialogue scene. It'll just get blasted in your ears by a Tide ad or whatever.
So it's sort of an intriguing exercise in exposing yourself to what happened to all the film that didn't get preserved, because obviously we've lost a large portion of film history. But it's largely films like this that are no longer any real significance to where there's an urgency around preserving them. But I also just find it intriguing that this film won a very, very major award.
Well, shared between 10 other films.
True enough, but it's still a Cannes winner.
Correct.
And nonetheless, it is ostensibly completely lost to time, or at least smudged out in about as literal sense as I can possibly mean.
Yeah.
So I think that this movie is fine. I'm engaged by the plot. I'm not really engaged by anything else, and there's sort of a meta narrative that I think we've already kind of talked through. It's not going to be a long episode today. So.
No, I don't think so.
Well, because also I think this might be the least popular film, or least relevant film we've ever reviewed for this.
Well, yet to be taken. That title is yet to be taken, I think.
What do you mean?
I think there was another one from 1945 that has even less watches on Letterboxd.
But I meant so far.
Sure.
Yeah. Which was interesting going into this, and knowing that it was a World War II film, and not really knowing going in how it was going to approach World War II as a topic, which is something that we've had covered numerous times here on this show, both through a couple of the Palme d'Or winning films, and also lots of those films being European films from 40s, 50s, 60s, following up on what happened after World War II. And then also through the Best Picture review series that we did, there's a couple of World War II era films there. But this is an interesting film in that I think it has a really interesting, unique perspective on who these characters are and the scenario that they're put into. It I think takes a totally different direction on a story that is told in this area at this point in history. But I think it is done a disservice by the craft of this film. Of course, I think we can just say as a blanket statement, done a disservice by the transfer, by the fact that it wasn't preserved, by the poor audio quality that smudges out some of the dialogue and information in scenes. But I also think that the movie starts off, and I'm already not sold on this narrative because it does something that you see quite a bit in older movies, especially ones with this short of runtime, is that it starts in medias res and doesn't ever really pick up steam in terms of information about our characters, information about the situation that they're in on a deeper level. It's very much we're trying to get to the point of the story, which is finding a community and helping other people, which I think is where the most interesting parts of the movie lie. But that first 45 minutes of the movie is just going around different European countries, and that's kind of it.
So I mentioned this to Abram as well while we were watching. Is that the one of these moments? I think probably about 15 minutes in is where I really felt like I think there's got to be like a missing reel of the film here, because what happens is they get off the train. The
train is attacked. That's like the first shot of the film.
Exactly. That's the bombing raid on the train tracks is the first shot of the film. They get out.
And they don't do a record scratch. How we got here.
So you're absolutely correct in that we're missing a modern interpretation of this film, which also did cross my mind. Is like, what if you remade this nowadays? Is you would absolutely open on one of the characters being on the train, another one being loaded on. They talk a little bit back and forth, and then if you want to get to that action sequence at the beginning, that comes 10, 15 minutes in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the film opens on that attack. They sneak off the train after it's been blowed all up.
Yeah.
And then they meet a farmer. Farmer gets him some food. Farmer hooks him up with a friend of his who transports them in like the little wagon.
No, it's the same guy, isn't it?
It's a different guy.
It's a different guy, but it's
We had the same conversation last night.
This guy's a badass because he hides them and lies
Yeah.
to the Italians, I think, to the fascists.
Yeah, border patrol.
Some dudes who want to harass them, and what even happens after that? I don't even they end up at the church,
right?
No. This is where I felt the missing reel is that. So first of all, there's the weird jump from the farmer to his friend,
Mm-hmm.
and then they get off the wagon and they have like what I felt was like a as close to characterization between these two as we get, which is their little like fun little back and forth like bickering or they're riffing really. In these reeds as they talk about how they're going to get across the lake or whatever, and they have the cigarette and they bury the cigarette, and he's like, whoever finds the boat first can get the cigarette.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty good. They had this riff about like, we're going to get there and we're going to meet the president. He's going to be so proud of us for having escaped and all this. And this is where the missing reel. So they split up. All right, we got to split up and go look for clues.
Mm-hmm. Great idea. Always.
The British one, Halliday, meets an Italian woman. And
kind of flirts a little bit.
And I'm like, okay, he's gonna meet this one character. British guy American guy Braddock is gonna go meet some other characters. That's how our merry band of refugees is gonna come together. No, we just hard cut from him like talking to this woman to they're in a boat.
They're in a boat.
We don't see them find the boat. We don't know who found the boat.
Yeah.
They are just rowing and they're like singing
They drop the cigarette.
That's right.
Yeah. That's never brought back.
Yeah.
And then that's a hard cut, and then it's a 5-second scene before actually come back to land.
Exactly.
So that whole thing was for nothing?
Or, like I said, a missing reel of the film is kind of what I feel like it has to be, because that is so sudden of a cut and a jump and everything that I'm like, there has to be something missing in there.
What is the time difference between the runtime of the movie that we saw at 93 minutes and the IMDb runtime at 1 hour and 44 minutes?
45,
15 minutes. That's a reel.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of.
I don't think there's a 15-minute scene in there though. I think it must be cut out from different chunks across the film because that's like 3 minutes worth of footage.
I felt it at a couple other points as well. These weird jumps in plot. Now that could just be poor structuring, or it could be lost reels, lost transfers, whatever.
As Tim was saying, a recut of the film.
Exactly, or recut, exactly.
A made-for-TV kind of thing.
Bad recut, then. If you even looking on this with a more modern eye, recutting this, you're like, how'd they get on the boat? Who found the boat? I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing is, I would say that I obviously haven't seen that footage, but I thought that was weird that they jumped from talking on the beach to they're in the boat, and then I think even kind of weirder that scene is so short, and then recontextualizes the past scene to make it feel kind of useless.
Mm-hmm.
But because none of the other elements, and maybe this is, again, I feel like we're going to have to kind of like add an asterisk to everything we're talking about here. Maybe this is supposed to have been brought back in footage that we did not see, but the cigarette thing never comes back again. The relationship with the Italian woman is not a part of the movie really past that point. A lot of this movie's sequences feel, I guess, internally cohesive, but not externally cohesive within the other parts of the film. It isn't until very late in the film when characters that were lightly referenced or seen earlier in the film start to reappear very late in the film. You're like, oh, okay, this is starting to feel like it's building upon itself, but it's very much a winding path of a movie as we jump from place to place and encounter different groups of people that feel different ways about a couple of ex-soldiers that are on the run, who, again, they're in an interesting situation, but
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about character here.
Yeah.
Our American guy and British guy, and I'm perfectly okay with not even caring to say their names and just
Halliday
saying
and
American
Braddock.
guy and British
come
guy.
On, no, come on, guys. Halliday and Braddock. Come on.
What about Major
I think that
Telford?
they're
Major Talford, of course, everyone's favorite. He's actually top billed on Letterboxd, which I found odd.
Yeah, he's top billed on
anyway.
IMDb too.
which means they must be pulling from the same source. or whatever.
Which, by the way, worth noting, all three of these guys were actual soldiers, who were cast in the film by director Leopold Lindbergh. They were all chosen and were, either ex-British or American World War II veterans.
Yeah, and they do a totally serviceable job of having a little bit of personality in the back and forth and making slightly different decisions, especially between those two core guys. But we never get any information about them other really than their situation. That they are soldiers and it is World War II and they have a goal, but a goal of getting home. That's a pretty basic goal. And then everything else and the journey to get there is sometimes complicated and sometimes is a little more interesting than other parts of it. But I feel like the movie is missing information on both ends. I think a more distinct goal would leave this movie to feel like it had a better driving force.
Yeah.
I often felt like I can't really tell where they're going. I can't tell why they're making decisions. They're just getting from place to place because they just need to keep moving.
They're trying to get to Switzerland.
Well, but they're not then. But then they turn around and then they make the decision again. Like it's a whole.
Oh yeah, because they they decide to turn back and help the other refugees, but the refugees are also trying to get to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then on the other
like
end, the character work. I think there's not a good foundation and there's not a good end point.
No, yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
There's not a good. It's not good plot writing or character writing. Is ultimately what we're saying here.
To jump back onto the plot, though, after they get to the church, and then we do end up with some like kind of people v people drama, which usually is what makes the best kind of movies. This, I do think it heats up a little bit, at least when we have like, are they going to take the refugees? Why are they going to take the refugees? What are the arguments for and against? And I think that at a couple of moments in this, I guess it's kind of this is the second act of the movie, as they're like figuring out whether they go or not, and as they start, like I do recall the scene about like one of the refugee women being like, you are helping us because you guys are real people and you are real humans who see our humanity. And out of a film that didn't strike me very emotionally at very many points, like this one moment that had a nice moment that then was called back to at the end with the Swiss border guard, who basically comes to the same conclusion, or even is convinced by, I think he's convinced by one of the soldiers to allow everybody in, to kind of just like sneak them through, to forego the rules and just let them in. That is a nice emotional note. And so I enjoyed that part. And the priest character is kind of cool. I really liked him just because of his strength as a character. As a character who's very set in his ways and is going to do what he thinks is right, and just because. And I guess I liked his performance too.
Priest character who opposes fascist rule and helps local peoples and refugees. Good in Rome Open City. Good in The Last Chance.
Yeah. Maybe these Italian Catholics were onto something.
Maybe they were. Well, hang on a second. Timo, you bring up these emotional moments that do work for you, and I have a couple of those as well. If we want to take a step off the hate train here for a moment, it's towards the end of the film when they're all in this sort of like abandoned cabin, like sort of on the verge of the Swiss border, and they're sort of like getting ready for their final push, and they're having their deep, their emotional conversations, because we know that some of them are probably not going to make it out of this. I think there are two moments here that work for me. One of them is the professor sort of talking about his work, his papers that we see earlier in the church. He has a book on the ethnic disparities in Europe since 1815. And well, initially, like you see the title of that book, and I felt this anyway. In that church scene, you're like, "Uh-oh, is this guy like a Nazi, like a secret Nazi of some kind?"
Yeah, I thought he
he's
was
reading this book.
He was a phrenologist. I was like, this
Yeah.
guy's on that phrenology shit, but
But
apparently not. His
he's a
papers are important and
phrenologist.
valuable.
Yeah, exactly. They're like people of different ethnicities and backgrounds can live together in harmony, and he's like, America's got it figured out. There's no problems over there. What's the year? 1945? Not gonna get better than this. Anyway, no, but he
1945,
lauds
the end of
America as a
history.
yeah, lauds America as
No, that's
this-
where we are now.
Yeah, we're at the end of history. As a a racial and ethnic mixing pot and everything like that. He's like, Europe can get there, but we have all these hateful ideologies and everything like that. Which I thought was a good diffusion of what I thought was going to be like a turn at some point, that he was going to be like a racist of some kind. And immediately following that, I think is probably the most broad emotional moment that works, is all these different people singing this like children's song in their native languages.
Yeah, that was another great
Yeah.
moment.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That whole sequence, I think, is the only part of the movie that endeared me to the characters. I think that there are fleeting moments previous to that, but I think that cohesifies the group. I think it plays up to that message that you were saying, Timo, that I think is really the only clear thematic message I get from this film, which is seeing people for their humanity and setting aside differences or preconceived notions. And we get a couple of moments there where they're arguing about a few things like, no, we need to calm down. We need to focus on what's important, making sure that everyone is safe and that we're sharing the same goal, put aside our differences. And then the singing part is it's a fun little moment of levity, which this movie largely lacks, given the situation. It makes sense. But yeah, that's easily my favorite part of the film.
Mm-hmm. I want to hear your thoughts, Abram. I'll just toss this in quickly. Like, I find myself very sympathetic to these kind of like refugee stories. And once we fold the refugees into this narrative and it's up to the soldiers to decide their fate, essentially, then I'm a bit more invested because
Absolutely.
we have, and the film is hinting that these are not Italian refugees. These are like, one of the women is like, she's crying, breaking down at one point. Like, I've been on the road for 10 years and I have to, we have to keep going at this point. And that kind of stuff is actually, I think, very effective and is a total good product of the time. A good product of this like filmmaking era is this kind of refugee cinema. And we've talked a bit about other examples. Casablanca from the other series is one that I like always point out. But this idea that mainly comes about in American cinema, but like an awareness of refugeeism and of what that is doing to people and how that affects their stories and their lives. Of course, all these people are Europeans, so that it's a lot easier for the other white people in the world to like see and recognize what's happening, because we've maybe lost that in more recent times. But I do appreciate how this film is like very centered about once we get there. And it takes us half the movie to get to these refugees, but once we're there, it's like they are the point. They are why we care. We got to get them across because there's women and children and these soldiers. I mean, I honestly am like, well, soldiers are soldiers. Like, you maybe you got drafted or maybe you signed up. However it happened, you're there and as a combatant as opposed to a civilian. And the film has a small discussion about that. I don't think it really says anything though. Abram?
Yeah, I mean, this is again where I come back to the idea that to me the film is not that bad. Because I agree with everything you're saying, Timo, but I also think that at a filmmaking level, there's like this reinforced sense of peril that I think is compelling. A couple of examples I really like is when we're in that lodge and we think that the soldiers are going to come inside to get warm for a moment, and we see their boots and we know the type of person inside. We have elderly people, we have children, we have a lot of people in no position obviously to fight. Then we have our soldier Telford, right? I think.
He's the major.
Yeah, but that's his name.
Yes, the older guy.
Telford.
Who we know who's also been captured in the past, and he sort of puts his hand back to like the small of his back 'cause he has his pistol there, and we know it only has 5 rounds. I think that there's moments like this that reinforce the gravity and the scale of the conflict. I also like there's I think his name is Giuseppe, who's supposed to take them.
He's like he's their guide, their mountain guide, or their their backpack guide to get to Switzerland.
He's supposed to take them there, and then he dies off screen. We just encounter his sort of
his mother.
His mother, and she's distanced from the world, and she's basically gone. And we're trying to get this information out of her as there's this sense that troops are continuing to close in on the area that they're in. And again, these are not especially, unique points of storytelling or unique ways to raise the stakes, but I think in the context of this film, to me, they work quite well. And I also just contextualize this through the lens of, again, its release in 1945. This is the story that you had available to tell about World War II.
It's like, why isn't there a more nuanced and perspective take on World War II in the year 1945?
It's kind of not over yet.
When it's still being fought.
Yeah. And so that's why, again, this is not a defense of the movie.
Sure.
Because I still think, well, we'll get to the scores in a bit.
Yeah.
But I think that there are these basic plot ideas, these basically nice blocked scenes that evoke a sense of tension or at least an understanding of stakes that work quite well. And I actually do like, to dovetail on an earlier point, I agree with you on the whole about that first act, Tucker, but I actually really like starting right with the attack.
Yeah.
I think that there's a real sense of energy to that. And I think that kind of carries me as a viewer forwards, knowing, okay, this is where we're going to begin. What's going to happen next? I think it's a propulsive beginning. Whether that peters out is another thing, but to me, I thought that was an effective way to start.
The issue is not starting on that action sequence. It's perfectly fine. It's that you kind of expect to at least be front loaded with a bit of character work, or at least to have that slotted at some point throughout the film, and it just really isn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. What was I had written down here? Oh. Speaking of the historical context of this film at the time in which it was made, I found it interesting that they literally insert like a historical event into it. It's not just like amorphously Italy World War II. It's the releasing of Il Duce. Is a massive plot point, and that sort of sends these characters out of the church. It's like, oh shit, Italy is gonna return to fascism soon. We better fucking get out of here now. Which I found that's the motivating force for our characters to not just stay static anymore. They have to keep.
It's like From Here to Eternity, Pearl Harbor.
Well, that's at the end of the movie, though.
But
regardless, this comes.
I just wanted to reference that.
I know you do. But it also motivates. I guess the other motivating factor is this guy that the priest is talking to in the street, who is this mysterious sort of shady Weasley guy who's like, "Ooh, I'm very interested. You don't happen to have any refugees with you, do you? Do you?
Any newcomers to
Pastor?
town?
Any newcomers to town? No. But then he hears that on the radio. He's like, well, I know there are refugees in that church, and I'm gonna go tell the Nazis because he's the bad guy. Anyway, so that's kind of the motivating factor for our characters to venture out into the wilderness, into the woods. I think initially before that they try to find Giuseppe, and then that's when they find out they find the bombed out village first. But yeah,
I think something that's just interesting about this is how the antagonist, that guy, is the only physically represented antagonist in this movie. The Germans are kind of your gray cloaked foot soldiers, but really the enemy of this is unseen and is not talked about a ton, but I think it's just really understood, and that's just kind of an interesting idea. Normally you have your Thanos, you have your bad guy. It's very obvious who you're fighting against, and it's obvious, but it's not shown so much. It's just
because it's not really a fighting against. It's an escaping of the system, the current governmental political system,
the nameless, faceless force of soldiers, which is largely what the film was concerned with. To your point, Timo.
Yeah, and which is why I think that the moment at the checkpoint when the guy is being brash to push away the soldiers, be oh, I'm work for the state. I can't believe you'd have the gall to touch these bags that say bags of the state or whatever on it. That moment where we see the faces of the I guess Italian soldiers, Nazis, at that checkpoint, and then also the moment of where the Nazis are shooting at them as they're trying to climb up this hill. I think that for me, that's the best moment of tension, as there's a group of 15, a dozen people all hiding on the snowbank, and this kid runs and gets himself killed, and
Bernard,
and his mother is crying, and the papers are flying everywhere, and it's this is it's a ridiculous scenario in terms of the heightened stakes. The Nazis are on skis. They have guns. There's a bunch of old people and children trying to climb a mountain to get to freedom. It's an exciting climax to
Mhm.
all of this, which is I think that the fact that follows the point that we were talking about, that is certainly the emotional climax of the film, where everyone is sharing their camaraderie. There's a moment of tension with the soldiers just outside. I think that emotional high, tension high, and then like climax high. I think that is where this movie is at its best. I think that it loses a little bit of steam after that. The idea that the last like 5 minutes of the movie, they're like
Oh,
waiting at the
thank
checkpoint,
you.
and they're like,
yes, thank you.
let's we're here, we made it. And they're like, well, only old people and children can go through.
Mhm.
And they're like, no thanks, let's all go through. And they're like, well, let me get on the phone.
Let me get on the
Oh,
phone.
yeah, it's fine.
Tucker, thank you for bringing this up, because Timo mentioned it earlier, and Timo, I think I have to say, not a criticism or a personal attack, but you did get it wrong that like the soldiers convince him.
No.
It's just like he gets a call and he's like, never mind, everyone can get in.
Yeah.
And like I turned to April when we were watching. I was like, well, that's super fucking anticlimactic. He doesn't get convinced. He's not like, well, this is against procedure and we have to follow orders.
Yeah.
He's like, damn guys, I really wish I could let you in, but I don't know. We'll have to see what my superiors say. Ring ring. Okay, we're good. Movie's ending.
the boss said it's
we go to
alright.
the funeral at the end, but then the movie ends.
And again, I think it just, again, rhetorically, like, if this is a movie about a sense of unity,
Uh-huh.
well, then ultimately you want them to be let through.
Exactly.
And it's an archetypal ending. You get it. It's just badly written.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying, and Tucker, what you were saying with that whole last sequence on the mountain just reinforces for me this idea that within scenes, and you said this earlier, and I completely agree with you, that there are these incredibly constructed scenes, but when they're put against these quite poorly written ones, and you sort of lack a sense of connective tissue, the film buckles under that weight.
Absolutely.
Because you go from this really well orchestrated scene, and I think even just being in the snow is effective, watching these people stumble and fall over each other. Even before the final chase by the Nazis on skis, just the
hike.
The character we know is the niece, her uncle falls in the snow.
Oh yeah, the
and
older like Jewish father and daughter. Yeah.
That's good stuff. And so it's a trick. The ending is tricky, right? Because you've built up to it nicely, and you want them all to get through. And the film as a point about like people supporting people needs them to get through. But you're right. That's not the way they should get.
Have like the character in the scene make the call. Like,
I
literally make the call,
misremembered
but like
a
make the
better
decision.
way for it to happen. Like the
exactly.
version that I made up as I thought it happened, which is not how it happened, is like the elements for having a little bit of heightened drama are all already there, and the thematic work is already there, even though it's not complicated or dense or anything. But it's like, utilize it, damn it. I don't.
Yeah.
It wants to trade on the intrinsic tension of waiting for that call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
What does this think this is? Dancer in the dark?
I was going to reference that earlier. No, you're right, but also that waiting is like 45 seconds.
Yeah, it's just kind of ineffective throughout.
Yeah.
Like there's just much better ways that it could have been done. I have to mention as well, since we're talking about the very end of this film, Halliday gets shot at some point during this like mountain
hard to
raid.
tell.
I didn't find the mountain action very thrilling like you guys did, I have to say. Mostly because it's like lots of thank you. Lots of far away, like just black silhouettes like on a mountainside, and then some of them fall over. Did they get shot? Did they trip? I don't know. Halliday gets shot. He is on a stretcher. He is on death's door. Okay. And they do makeup on him, as one might do, I guess, for someone who's sickly. And like, this is, I don't know what kind of audience is coming to The Last Chance review, but dear audience member, if you are familiar with the Evil Dead franchise, particularly the early installments by Sam Raimi, his makeup reminded me of like the zombies or the Deadites from that, where it's like super exaggerated, like wrinkles, and he's super like slick and shiny and everything. I was like, is he zombified? What's going on with this guy? Why does he look like that? When someone gets shot, sure they're sweaty and pale, but they don't have like protrusions and wrinkles coming off of their face. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, I just thought that was
Weird.
odd. I was like, why Why does he look like that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm out.
You're out of stuff
I'm out.
already.
Abram's
Oh,
out.
brother.
I mean,
he's
so
ringing
am
the
I.
he's ringing the round bell. Ding ding ding.
I think the only thing I really have to mention as well is that we talk mostly about the writing and the underwhelming character work and the fact that the plot scene to scene is pretty shaky, or at least not particularly engaging or unique.
Mhm.
But I also think that this film, filmically, is obviously very much hampered by the transfer that we had to watch. But I found basically no interesting shot composition. There's
Yeah.
not really any interesting moments of sound. Of course, sound still relatively new at this point in time, but I didn't even find that many of the sequences outside of the couple that were more focused, as they're saying, that they were visually or sonically engaging.
Mhm.
We had to watch it through this muddy, shaky, post-colorized version, but
Mhm.
I'm not. The framing's not even particularly interesting.
Yeah.
The shot, the blocking and the editing is there's nothing really.
I mean,
to it.
it's standard for the
on
time. I do.
nighttime. Oh, sorry. Tanner.
I do have to say, would normally watch a post-colorized version. I would usually opt for the original intention of the filmmaker here, but it was just like nighttime scenes, especially. You could just not make out anything.
That's what I was gonna say. The nighttime scenes exposure was just really, really low, and you'd get like
Mhm.
your screen is mostly black, and the person is this slightly lighter shade of black, and then there's like a little twinkling spectral glint of a highlight
There's-
for something that is undeterminate in the background. Okay, I'm gonna read the subtitles for this scene.
Yeah. There is one moment when that's happening. It's after the like fake armistice thing, when the woman brings the soldiers to her uncle, and her uncle's like, "You better get on a train." Hard cut to they're on a train, which is another like missing reel moment potentially, where they're like looking out the windows and they see a woman that they later meet up with again at the
Yeah.
church. Her husband is sort of separated off and taken away, and like you learn from later scenes that that's what happened. But if you're watching it, it's just nothingness, and then and then a cow drifts across the screen because a train is coming in the opposite direction. It's a livestock car, and a cow's head is poking out of it. So it's just black nothingness, void, and like some sounds of rustling, and then a cow that moves as it goes across, which is just pretty funny, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, brother.
You have any details?
And we've gone over these a couple of times. I think last time we did a 1945, I didn't do them, so I'll talk about it right
Well,
now.
you should do it in each one because if someone's watching just one Quest episode,
That's right. that's right.
You
Sure,
can't
you're so
deprive
right.
them like this.
I fucked up. You're right. Oh god. Oh god.
you disappointed the last chance crowd.
George Huysman was the jury president this year. He did it for a long time with these first couple jury Cannes Film Festivals.
Grady bastard.
Yeah, greedy bastard. All right. Other jury members. Shout them if you know them. Iris Berry
I know
from the
him.
USA. That's right. Sergei Gerasimov from the Soviet Union.
I know him.
And Rodolfo Uzigli from Mexico.
Tucker knows him.
That's right. Other films in competition that did not win the 11-way tie for Best Feature Film at this Cannes Film Festival included Jacques Cousteau's Beauty and the Beast.
Hey, that's an
George-
interesting movie.
It is a good movie. I like that one a lot. George Cukor's Gaslight. That's a good
Hey,
movie.
wait.
Gilda
Hey, wait, that's a good movie.
and Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious.
Hey, wait, hold on.
Wait a
Yeah, all
moment.
good movies. All good
Hey, wait,
movies.
why do we have to watch this when all that stuff was not?
Well, let's see how many do we
Didn't
have
we
left from
already watch
1945.
Notorious?
Let me
No, we
round
watched
them
a
off
different one of his that won Best Picture.
here. We watched Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. That was
We have
similar
one.
words right there.
2,
No.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 films left from 1945.
Yippee. So you've done 4.
Yeah, we've done 4. This will
Okay.
be number 4.
Well, shall we see where this one stacks up against the other 4 on the list? I'm looking at Red Meadows right here. Red Meadows is at spot number 19, 5.9 points. Will we see if The Last Chance goes above or below that? I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see
I
how
don't
we feel.
know.
But not very long. Don't worry. That's coming right now.
It's like the phone call we're waiting. Will we be allowed to see the scores? Hold on, let me
Yeah.
call somebody.
Yeah, just wait 45 seconds.
Beep, 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 beep.
Oh yeah, we can. Oh my God, we've got a
Hot
score.
dog.
Oh, it's the bottom. It's 3.5. That's below anything else. So we've got a new number 23rd on the list, below Ziegfeld Follies, The Last Chance. It got a 3.1 from Tucker, a 3.5 from Abram, a 3.7 from me, and a 3.8 from Tanner. That's just a straight up
Nice
3.5
cluster.
average. There's no
Yep.
extra numbers on that one.
No ifs, ands, or buts. No
Yeah.
ties, no nothing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about this film in the context of everything that we reviewed up to this point, is that
Mhm.
there have been some films that I didn't like very much, but I do think that on the whole, even the weaker ones have something artistically or thematically that we were able to dig into a little
Yeah.
bit more. I think that this film, it feeling very much of the time in a negative way, as in, I feel like I've seen this before. I feel like this could be done better. There's a base of a story here, but you can't give a movie too much credit for having a good base and nothing to build upon it.
Can't
This
live in
was-
a foundation.
This was a complete.
That's true. You cannot. That's just a concrete pad you'd be living on. And
Yeah.
you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I feel like I'd have to set up my own tent, but then I couldn't even do that because you can't drive the stakes into it because it's
That's
concrete.
true. It's
Let me
concrete.
make this promise though.
Okay.
If somebody in the audience wants to fully restore this film, we will review it.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Full restoration of The Last Chance. Send it to
Well-
us. www.
We don't have a website.
No, not yet.
Well, what's
We're
interesting
working
though
on
is I saw somewhere, maybe it was on the Wikipedia, that this film was shown again at
in
a
2016.
in 2016. A better print of this exists out there. They would not have shown this at a festival if it was in this quality.
That's, well, you know.
It's just not digitized. it
That's true.
seems.
Probably not digitized.
I
You're-
mean, there
you're
could
right,
be.
you're
I
right.
was, just listening to the audio quality.
They
I was
didn't
like,
play
this
the
is
YouTube version.
like,
Well, they might have.
I sincerely doubt that.
Maybe, but, well, they say it was played there. Maybe, maybe they just decided.
The Cannes Classics section at the 2016 Cannes Film
Well,
Festival.
we don't know. We don't know how what the infrastructure is of the Cannes Classic section. Maybe it's like some guys in a basement covering
Yeah.
around a TV.
I mean,
they USB-C to HDMI.
That's right. Exactly. Maybe.
yeah,
They didn't have USB-C back then.
in 2016.
Isn't that like a new thing?
I don't know.
it's
I don't know.
not that old.
While we were recording, I have to come clean. I was not giving the review my full undivided attention because I was looking at how many more World War II films we have to review from this very first Cannes Film Festival, and there are, by my count, Timo, Brief Encounter is a World War II film, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, Brief Encounter is left for of the World War
the
II
David
stuff.
Lean one.
David Lean.
No,
was
no,
one
no,
of the-
never mind.
one
It's
of the
not.
11
It's
others.
not
This is a
World War II
romance
film.
movie.
It's like
Oh,
a,
okay,
it's
okay,
an like
sorry.
adultery film. It's about cheating.
Oh, an adultery film. Okay, I'm all about that. Well, then we have Men Without Wings as a World War II film from this very first one, and The Turning Point.
Okay.
We got two left. Two out of what is it? Seven.
All right. I like those odds.
Yeah,
And World War II films can be great.
that's true.
They can be
Those
great.
other
Those
ones-
films might be better.
That's
In fact,
right.
I would wager they probably
And
are.
that latter one, The Turning Point, is the one that will probably have the most trouble finding of this entire series
Oh.
because I think it has like 100 watches on
Oh my
Letterboxd.
gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, dear viewer, we're really in this shit for you. We are slogging through watching these bad rips, and well, because there's gold in them thar Palm d'Or hills.
That's true.
That's what it is. It's.
Should we find which nugget we're going to unearth next, Timo?
I think that's a great idea, Tanner.
The turning point. The turning point.
Just get that out of the way.
TPBLB.
Oh no! Oh no! Well, they wouldn't be a big fan because this is a Soviet film. The Turning Point is.
Bummer.
Anyway,
Turning point, yes.
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it on reel? Wheel, what's your deal? Hopefully, there's not some missing reels.
The deal
Whoa.
is number 41.
Number 41
That's like
brings
right
us
in the
much
middle.
closer to
so
the present.
hopefully, like the 60s.
Huh.
This gives us a
Ooh.
film by Volker Schlondorf
Oh,
from
Volker Schlondorf.
1979.
This guy's kind of lit. I watched one of his documentaries.
Right
Okay.
on.
This is a film starring Mario Adorf, Angela Winkler, David Bennett, some other people. It's not only 3 people film.
Okay.
From 1979, we'll be watching The Tin Drum. The
Tin Drum.
description goes as follows.
Hmm.
The tagline says, "A savage, sweeping epic of society and chaos."
Whoa.
Sounds
What is
like
this, Joker?
Okay. And then the actual description says,
Here we go.
repulsed by the hypocrisy of adults and the irresponsibility of society, a boy refuses to grow older after his 3rd birthday.
Whoa. Okay.
Cool.
That's a cool idea. That's a
That's
good
neat.
premise.
Yes.
This
We have a man to
I
vouch for.
I have
Volker
indeed
Schlondorf.
seen a Volker Schlondorf film. It was a documentary about Billy Wilder, and so I am going to be looking for little tidbits of Mr. Wilder in this film.
And just looking at the poster there on Letterboxd, this seems like a Criterion movie.
I think that is a Criterion poster, yeah. This is a tight, paltry 162 minutes.
Yippee!
Mm-hmm. 2 hours 40. You know,
Yeah,
we've had
whatever.
worse. We've had worse.
We got off easy the last 2 weeks.
That's
frankly.
true. We've had worse, and we will have worse yet in the series. If you think that a long movie is worse, which I do not.
It is.
Okay.
Long movies are always bad. Movies should only be 90 minutes.
90
true.
minutes,
Maximum
and
day
if
away
your
from
movie is
TikTok
maybe
so
1
long.
hour and 44 minutes, you should cut it down for television so that it's an hour
Yeah.
30 exactly.
Cut out the
right.
character work. That's what I always
And
say.
then don't post it anywhere in good quality online. That's how you get
do
it.
that.
80 minutes and then credits.
80 minutes with credits.
Mayhaps take a little bit of film and light it on fire when you're done too, just to make sure that nobody else can see it.
Sure. All right.
And everyone else's film while you're at it.
1979's The Tin Drum.
The Tin Drum next week. Thanks for talking about The Last Chance. Not our last chance to talk about World War II. More of that coming up sometime in the future. As I always say, I really got nothing more. So stay cool.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
warm.
Oh,
Peace.
This is bye.